he said, "You guys are a bunch of C dot 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 TS," and there was a fantastic boo that went up.
Okay,
Yeah.
then we're joined
Oh,
by Derek Schulman and Kerry Monier from Gentle Giant, and we're going to be discussing the wonderful new issue of Gentle Giant's Playing the Fool. It's a wonderful, wonderful reimagined version of this classic prog album. It will be out on May the 2nd, and there is a purchasing link just below this video. First of all, let's start with both of you. How do you feel about the overall mix of this album? How do you feel about this version of it?
Harry.
Go on, Kerry.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm thrilled.
Well, why are you so thrilled
Um,
with it exactly?
well, what I was thrilled with was the fact that it was a concert environment, and which is very different in many ways than the original. So it's presented as a complete concert, and in a way where you feel like you're actually there, and there's nothing there to make you feel you ever leave. So you're just watching a complete performance by the band, playing more or less at the peak, I would say, of what we used to do. It's some lovely playing. There's some humour in it because we used to muck around. He's captured an awful lot. And so I welled up a bit, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
First time I heard it, I just thought, I've not been part of anything as exciting as this for a long time,
Yeah.
about 50 years. So it thrilled me. It thrilled me, yeah. And the quality of the sound as well, and the environmental experience. That's what I picked up from it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I love the fact they've added audience ambience as well. Derek, what
Yeah,
are your thoughts on this reimagined remix of Playing the Fool?
Well, I think Kerry took the words out of my mouth completely.
okay.
Uh, no, I think that as Kerry said, it's something that showed the band at its peak, be about at its peak musically and popularity wise. I mean, we were playing at that time, some pretty big venues, and I think that caught the band. This album caught the band at the perfect time for the band when the band was you know hitting the mark across the board. So and Dan, when he suggested to do the whole concert as opposed to what we had before, um, I thought it was a great idea. And what he did was bring in a couple of tracks which we didn't do on the first go round because we hadn't started promoting interview, but more especially was Ray's violin solo, which
Mhm.
is always an incredible highlight of the show. And Ray would, play around with the band, play around with the audience, but he also entertained really well. That's something that I feel is on the album as well. We feel like, as Kerry said, we're having a lot of fun
Yeah.
playing live, and I think you can hear it on the album that the audience had fun too.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, it's interesting you say both of you said the band are at the top of their game. Undoubtedly, that's true, I think. But Power and the Glory did very well in 1974. Could it not be argued that 1974 would have been an ideal time to release a live album?
Yeah, well,
Oh,
I'll jump in
Yeah.
and say, yeah, and
yeah.
I think that we yeah, it could have been, but we had free hand following that, I think. And I think the band we were certainly developing, developed as a real five piece, if you like.
Mhm.
And I think we needed a little more, a year or two more to really, catch ourselves to again to be on our top of our game. But we toured a great deal, as you probably know.
Yeah.
We toured and rehearsed and recorded. I don't think we ever took a breath in the 10 years we were together, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
God,
Mm.
yeah. Um,
Kerry, what do you think, Kerry?
would
Well,
you
I
rather have
think
seen the live album around about sort of 74?
no, I wouldn't have. I don't think. I'm afraid I don't think in marketing terms.
Okay.
Um, but I would have said probably not. I was enjoying the whole experience of being in, I came from, I didn't have any experience in bands before. So
Mhm.
studio experience, so 4 or 5 albums in, 6 albums in, I'm still enjoying myself. very much. And I think the live album thing came from people saying, I like the way you do things live. We used to do them with more confidence because we only just learnt them when we recorded them.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And by
exactly.
by the time we did the live versions, we were, playing around with them, giving it everything that all the personality of the players was really coming through. And so I suppose, yeah, it was time to do it at the end.
Yeah.
But I don't think I don't think it occurred to us, did it dare to do it any earlier, really?
No, no, I don't think so because we were well, we were on our sort of roll, if you like. We were recording, we were
Yeah.
touring. We had a really good success with the Power and the Glory, and went further with Freehand, which was a quite a big album because comparatively. So I think right after that was we didn't think about the commercial aspect of it or the marketing of it. We just thought, as Kerry said, people said you're really different live, and you're better live in certain respects than you are on record. So we said,
Mm,
okay, well let's make a live album then.
Yeah.
So we
Okay.
did.
yeah.
Interesting. I mean, we stick with Kerry. Was your hand forced at all by the release in '75 of some pretty decent sort of Gentle Giant bootlegs that were came onto the market? And also, was the stratospheric success of Frampton Comes Alive, did that kind of spur you on at all?
Was that when we played in Hanheim Stadium, do you mean, with
Yeah, I
Peter
think so. I
Frampton?
mean, '75 there were quite a few Gentle Giant bootlegs that came out, pretty good ones, I think. I just wonder if that
Yeah.
you to quell that
I,
market by
I
releasing a live album.
I knew that we always gave ourselves to the audience. There was a sense in which we were energized by the very situation of being on stage. I learnt a lot from the Simon Dupree people, see, and you really, when we were supporting, we were only often in 6 foot of space at the front of the stage, half the PA, half the lights. So what have you got? You just got communication with the people, give yourself to it, and that's what we were used to doing live, and it did come across in the playing.
Yeah.
So I would say that yeah, it was well valid to do it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think I listened to the bootlegs very often because they quite often very poor quality, and it used to depress me a bit because we hadn't had a yeah,
I kind
carry
of,
on.
no, I think, well, I just remember when we first saw Playing the Fool, which we stole the name from, by the way,
Mhm.
the first bootleg. I was quite happy that someone
Oh,
would actually think that we were good enough to record and put it on a
before
disc. Why
Well,
would someone record our band and make a record?
yeah.
You
I
know,
I can't remember who said it, but I think somebody said you're nobody until you've been bootlegged.
That's kind of exactly what I felt. I mean, we, said, wow, somebody's likes our band so much they want to bootleg us. So I think, and when we saw the that first bootleg, again, that's what we did. We stole the official. I think it was official live bootleg. That's what we called it.
Yeah.
mm,
Was the stratospheric success of Frampton Comes Alive, did that kind of prod you on to get a live album out?
Um, I think there was a little bit of element of yeah, that Frampton had a big hit from that, and I think there was certainly apart from the fact that we wanted to present ourselves in a live aspect, we hoped that perhaps there could be a track which we would never have and never probably could do a
mm,
single that would come out of it. But it certainly was possibly in on our minds or my mind a little bit. But I don't think we were ever thinking about getting a single like Peter Frampton did. But at that time, there was a few bands that presented themselves on a live basis, and I think that um, the reason why, and I've said this in a couple of other places, why we did and why they did was because we could play live.
Hmm.
We didn't have any hard drives or auto tunes or anything. We didn't have backing tracks or anything, and that's why there was quite a few good live albums at that time. The bands could play.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this album came out more or less it came out exactly the same year as the Sex Pistols put out Never Mind the Bollocks. Did you ever view those phlegmy upstarts as a threat?
No, no, I don't think so, because we knew our audience was so different from part of that scene. So I didn't, I certainly never even, I didn't think about it, to be honest. As I say, I was very insular in my head. But
Well,
yeah, I
we were
was,
all together as well, Kerry. We were in
yeah,
Portsmouth all together as a band. We didn't look out; we looked in for the most part.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I think somebody's pointed out that the album "Acquiring the Taste" is not particularly well represented at this time. Was there any reason why that you weren't playing that much material from it, or was it just pushed the songs were just pushed out by better songs, in your opinion?
Kerry, you comment on that one because that was a weird one for me.
Yeah, I think the acquiring the taste, you say,
Hmm.
Yeah.
was a wonderful, it was us beginning to find our feet as a band. And it was very much a studio thing in many ways, because some of the tracks were just held together with a metronome, because we didn't even have a click trap in those days.
Right.
So so we just used to record on one track, a metronome, and there were various sections which still perhaps needed completion while we were recording, and lyrics to be written, and we did an awful lot in the studio. So it was very much a studio album, and I suppose we've always been aware of what we needed to do when we're on stage,
Hmm.
and we're not. I don't didn't see us as a head down. Let's reproduce the quieter sections as they are on the album. We've never managed. We never. It was never in our head to do that, I don't think. So we needed things with more energy, and I love that second album very much. But I think it probably was the fact that there weren't that many tracks on there that I think, yeah, would you agree, Dare?
Yeah, I was a little uncomfortable with that album because we didn't rehearse well, as you said, we didn't have time to rehearse and write as much as we could. Well, but the first album was always, the one that you rehearse and then we had to do another album fairly quickly. And as you said, it was a lot of stuff done in the studio. And me personally, we all like to make sure that what we went into the studio with was pretty much rehearsed, but that was probably the only one which we kind of like didn't didn't have much. Well, we had a few things written, but as you said, we were doing
Yeah,
things to a click track. But it shows a great deal of creativity. But that's hard to recreate on stage uh,
yeah,
because some of the music was, it was a little for me. It was a hard one to. I'm a little more. How can I, a little more sort of restricted in my view, and it was much more expansive, more Carey and Ray than me. So,
Oh,
it
oh,
was
sorry.
well, but
Yeah,
when I
yeah,
look back, it's quite an achievement to tell you the truth,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's
but
interesting.
hard to do live, as Carey said.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, this album is said to be a really faithful reproduction of the band live at this time. But is it true that the clavinet was re-recorded or overdubbed in the studio later on for this album?
For the original album, there were a couple of moments when I needed to replace things, because flipping clarinet, not clarinet, clavinet. Yeah, I don't play the clarinet. Has a huge pickup on it, and therefore, whenever I'm playing in the concert situation, there are usually lights, and the lights have thyristor dipping things,
Mhm.
and they used to play havoc with the clavinet, and the hum
Yeah,
was
the buzz.
unbearable. There was a buzz that came. It didn't come in rehearsals, sound check. It wasn't there because the lights weren't there. So you didn't find out about it until you got on stage. And
But were they on every show, Carey?
what
The buzz on the keyboards.
it was worse, but some nights than others. So I remember having to patch a few bits because the buzz was so bad. But there's no patching in terms of, I mean, all the notes were correct. So
Yeah.
there
Yeah,
was
there was
nothing.
there was yeah. I don't think we went in and
We had
redid everything. No. You know,
No.
there
No.
were no, there was maybe, Kerry's buzzes, which keyboards were
Yeah,
always an issue.
they
Even
were.
that was part of the breakdown in Brussels, of course.
Yeah. Well, it is.
You
It
know,
is. It is reviewed. It is revered as a strikingly authentic live album. It's just due to technical issues. They had to redo the clavinet.
Yeah, there were plenty of those. Yeah, there were. Well, a good chap to talk to is Dan Bornemark, who put it all together. But there were even problems with the capstan on the recording thing. So the pitch varied from one end of a track to the other. So he's managed to straighten all that out
Right.
on this release. On the original release, it's all as recorded,
yeah.
except for any technical problems that we had,
Yeah.
and they weren't extensive. Um,
Sure.
Well, we
yeah,
didn't. But the point I think with Kerry, with the buzz thing, I think you did that. But I think generally we didn't go back and re-record anything at all. There weren't
no,
re-records of any, bass parts or guitar or vocals or anything like that. What you heard is what you saw in whatever shows there were, I think. You
Yeah.
mm,
know.
Yeah. And of course, strangely, I think around about this time, probably about 75, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you actually supported Black Sabbath. First of all,
yeah.
how did that go? And did you manage to avoid the certain touring excesses that that band are famed for? Who wants to weigh in on this one? Who's Trump?
Well,
Okay,
Go on, Gary.
I'll
well,
let,
it was earlier actually. It was our first tour of America
All
in
right.
yeah,
1970. It was 1972,
Oh, okay.
and we did not participate in the excesses and the chemical romances that our headliner would often do, and in fact, it was kind of a funny tour because we literally spend do one show with them and they do the show and have 3 or 4 days off because they were so whacked out from whatever they were doing and but we were friends with them. I mean, they're with the same manager. Um, but it was a tough show to do because obviously we were on stage and no one knew us, so immediately we got booed straight away. I mean, people were get off, Black Sabbath. But I think our ability to put our heads down and say, okay, we got a rock audience here, let's do the hardest songs. We were generally able to get at least a clap and occasionally yeah, more in various venues, except for the very last show at the Hollywood Bowl,
Mhm.
which was quite a, a well documented show, if you like. I don't know whether Kerry wants to tell it or not,
Go on,
but
Kerry, weigh in. What the
well, no, it's just
Hollywood Bowl show?
it was. I was just thrilled that we were playing to so many people. I mean, they
yeah,
were. So the Hollywood Bowl was our first gig on the West Coast, which is not a bad starting point.
Hmm.
And of course, they were waiting for heavy stuff, and so we did. They were getting restless, and somebody threw a firecracker on stage at one point, and Phil, who was used to teaching very rough kids in Portsmouth, he was an ex-English teacher,
Uh-huh.
just said a few choice words, and I remember them going quite respectfully quiet after that. But and
well, not initially, Kerry.
wasn't it? Did they? I can't remember that.
It's on tape actually. Initially,
It is.
well, yeah, it is. I've got it actually in my office. But yeah, the crowd. Phil went up to. I think what we did was actually stop playing, which a band should never do. You remember
Yeah.
that?
No, no, I can't remember stopping.
Yeah, we stopped, and I said,
You're
"Well,
right.
this is." I went up first and said, "Hey, man, you got cool. Try to be. I was trying to be cool, man, or whatever." And Phil, he's a little more mercurial. I don't know whether I'm going to tell you exactly what he said, but he said, "You guys are a bunch of C dot 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 TS," and there was a fantastic boo that went up. It was, and then, you know, I remember it because I've got the tape of it. But
Yeah,
anyway, but we went back and finished our set, and, because it was during the Funny Ways, I think.
funny
You had the
ways with the
cello and violin
violin
and,
and vibraphone.
all that stuff,
Yeah,
and bands are not used to seeing that kind of stuff on stage when you've got Tony Iommi and Geezer playing their stuff. Anyway, so that's what happened, and we went and finished the set, but boy, we couldn't get out of town quick enough.
But it all did us good though, didn't it,
Oh yeah,
really?
oh yeah. Next year we played LA, or a year after,
Yeah,
and we did six. Well, we played the whiskey I think 5 or 6 nights, and we could have
that was
done.
really, yeah.
Oh, it was
And
amazing. Yeah,
so it just shows even though it appears to be not a very good idea, it
Mm.
worked to
yeah,
some degree.
exactly.
Yeah.
Everything's for a purpose somehow. Yeah, it
Yeah,
worked out.
exactly.
There's only one thing worse than not being talked about, and what is it? There's only one thing worse than being talked about, and that's not being talked about. Something
Yeah,
like that.
Exactly.
There's no such thing as bad publicity.
that's right.
Interesting. Recording Civilian in the US with Jeff Emerick. I mean, did that influence the more rocky sound, and were you hoping for a bit of Abbey Road magic
Talk, talking of Abbey Road Magic, I went there 2 weeks ago
2 weeks ago?
uh, as a guest. Yeah, there was a
Did you do
chap
the famous
who
walk across the crossing?
no, I watched other people doing it and filming it, but I no, I was invited in to have a look round and to witness a lovely recording session with an orchestra. There's a chap who's a fan of the band, Robert Miller, who's a
Mm,
film writer. He invited me, and it was just love. And they let me in, and there was no one in. As it happened, the whole lot was empty. So I just walked around these iconic Studio 2 all on my own and just imagined it all happening there. It was a very lovely moment for me, really. But no, we weren't
okay.
looking for Abbey Road, were we? How did we get Jeff? Because he was
Well,
lovely to work with.
yeah, I knew Jeff because, well, I mean, because it's a strange thing for me and for Ray and Kerry, for Ray basically, it was the very first record we ever produced. This is in Simon Dupree and the Big Sound.
Hmm.
Jeff Emerick was our engineer. This is
Ah,
with I See the Light when I was still at school, when we were both still at school. But Jeff was in the studio with our producer, and he was there at the very beginning. And Abbey Road at that time was, I mean, we were there at the same time as the Beatles. So this is a whole different era. So I had that background, to realize that I had, and I knew Jeff, uh, having been with him, and when we decided to do Civilian in LA, um, I think I reached out to his manager and said, because we knew he was great, having had his career,
mm,
um, as good as it was, and but I don't think we were even thinking about Abbey Road at all. I think we just knew that Jeff was such a great engineer. The interesting thing about Jeff, though, was hadn't realized. I don't care if you remember this, but he had this little gin bottle in his pocket. You remember
I
that?
didn't. I don't know.
Oh God,
I
I'm
was
sorry. I'm too
no, no,
observant. I'm sorry.
that's all right.
So
Carry on. Yeah. So
so
it was.
so, so between takes, he'd like take a little sip by the end of the session. He was kind of a little la la, but it turned
Yeah.
out well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it's interesting, Giant for a Day album. I was going to ask Kerry, how do you feel specifically about your contribution on that album, Giant for a Day?
Oh, I did struggle a bit with
Mm,
it because it wasn't something that I felt I could give as much as I wanted to the band. I felt a little bit hamstrung because I couldn't quite work out what I was supposed to contribute when it went in this direction. Um, I found a few things and there were some lovely little tracks on there, but it was the one that I found most difficult because I didn't feel I couldn't contribute quite as I suppose it was partly a reaction to what a lot of other things that were happening in the band at that time, and
mm,
Yeah.
I I was willing to give it a go. I just didn't. I didn't. We used to go off and hire things like Elizabethan instruments and for the earlier albums. We didn't do any of that for Giant for a Day, did we?
No, I think honestly,
It was a
I think Ray was probably most influenced by what was going on.
mm,
Um, I think three of us, Ray, Kerry, and me, uh, I think Ray dragged us a little bit along
Mhm.
with what we were trying to do with Giant for a Day is to try and be commercial, and
Mm.
honestly, it fell flat, to be honest with you, and there's no harm in admitting it. It wasn't really who we were, and
Mm.
but you know what? It's not bad to try something, and if it doesn't work, then okay, then you
Yeah.
try something else.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it seems a lot of the Gentle Giant fans that I've spoken to, it's the one album they tend to struggle with,
Yeah,
Giant for a Day. Is that because you feel it was just so out of character for the band?
yeah, yeah. It's good of them to give it a go.
But as Carrie said, I think there's some good stuff on there, but it's not like
Yeah.
it's it's a little bit to be honest, it's a little bit contrived, and that's something that the Gentle Giant, I think, never had in their repertoire to be contrived.
Mm.
Even what my concern about acquiring the taste, at least it was never contrived, and that was probably the most good. It was contrived, and that's not good for the band.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
Um, Kerry, I'd like to ask, yeah, I think you once, is it true that you felt that Rick Wakeman and Keith Emerson were a little bit too showy? First of all, this first part of the question. The second part of the question is, how did you feel, or what did you think of Richard Wright, his playing and his contribution to Pink Floyd as a player?
I don't know Pink Floyd stuff very well to comment on that. I know that the other two players you mentioned
Mhm.
are really proficient players, and yeah, I like to hear good players. Certainly got no find no fault with that, and technically they're probably a lot better than I am.
Mhm.
I suppose
It's,
what I've always looked, what
it's
I
not true,
always,
by the way.
yeah, what,
Not true. Not true,
oh,
Kerry.
well, no, but no,
I'm
but
standing up for you.
okay, thank you. It's more what somebody's communicating through what they play is what gets to me, and quite a lot of players are really good, but I'm always looking for something from the heart,
Yeah,
and that's I suppose when people are in a different realm from that, I find it more difficult to appreciate and listen to for any length of time.
yeah.
So a few notes carefully chosen can move me a lot more
Mm.
than loads of notes and loads of arpeggios
Mm.
but I mean hats off. All these people were better than I am at getting good sounds out of keyboards. I
Yeah.
tended to stick with my organ and the clavinet and the Wurlitzer. I knew where I was with those.
You didn't think a few
Ray,
well-placed daggers might have done got the
oh,
set you
I
wanted?
should have given that a go. Yeah, no,
Kerry, I think Kerry and daggers don't know. It's not a match that is made in heaven.
I'm intrigued actually. I mean, you supported Jethro Tull. I think it was on the 1972 tour, Thick as a Brick. What was your experience of supporting Tull? Because that must be more attuned. That audience must be more attuned to what you were doing, I think.
yeah, yeah. I'm very fond of them, weren't we?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we used to enjoy watching them. Normally, when we were supporting, we often didn't wait. I mean, we've supported Thin Lizzy once in Devices. I remember. I don't remember waiting. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
I'm sure it's true. Anyway, there were lots of people that we didn't wait to see, but Jethro, we were always
Yeah,
his show was great. His music was great. And the people in the band were great. They were the nearest things to friends I think that we had really
yeah,
on the
yeah.
road.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we did the European tour first, and they invited us to the European tour in '72, and actually we broke actually in a couple of markets from that tour, Italy in particular, and Germany, and then while we were in the US, that was after the Sabbath tour, I think. They were doing the US tour, and we stayed over
that's
and
right.
supported them in the US tour, and we got along really well. I mean, they I think they enjoyed our music. Ian and the band, they enjoyed what we did, and we enjoyed them, professionally and or musically. So we got along really well, both again on stage and personally as well.
Yeah, yeah. I've got one more question for you, and that is a question I often ask many people, and that is Frank Zappa famously said that jazz isn't dead, it just smells funny. Um, if in rock and roll these days, with people miming, playing to backing tracks and things like that, how healthy is rock and roll then? Do you see something particularly fraudulent about that, in the words of John Lydon?
Yeah.
So, what fraudulent in what way?
Bands playing live these days, and they're playing to backing tracks and recordings,
Oh,
and
oh, I see.
instead of playing
Well,
live.
I, I've got no objection to any trickery as long as it's done in a creative way that communicates something, and in some ways engaging. Um, I hate formulaic stuff. That I think we all do, don't we? If we're all
Yeah.
honest, if you sense that something's been put together in order to be successful without any real inspiration of any sort, um, but how they present it, I think there are different skills. I love what
Mhm.
some people do that I could never do with technology, for instance, and stuff. So, no, I've got nothing against how people present things. It's just whether it's got something that's communicating something fresh or exciting, or yeah, that's I think that's my humble opinion on it.
Okay. What do you think of
Well,
this?
Barry, well, I tend to kind of either agree or disagree with Kerry because I think that the spectacle and the technology is all well and good and certainly entertaining,
Mm,
but the fact is that's when you have a band that can play their instruments really, really well and can convey an emotion to the audience, uh, then you've got so many senses that are touched. And with technology, you've got senses in your ears and eyes that can touch, but it doesn't touch your soul or heart or anything else. When you've got a fantastic band, no matter what genre or orchestra or
Yeah.
whatever, who can play their instruments really, really well, uh, then then you've got something which will last much longer than the zeros and ones that are being offered on stage. And I think that I think
Mm.
that you said, is rock and roll dead? No, I don't think it is. But I think it's a situation where bands should not think about being big and famous and being on TikTok and having likes and God knows what else. Go out there and play your asses off and be
mm,
really, really good. And that way you'll make a living being a musician. That you should still do that. But don't expect to be a multi-millionaire because that's not the way it works unless you're extremely lucky. But the tech stuff, yeah, it's entertaining. It's a spectacle. But there's not many bands for me or artists for me in the last 20 odd years that really that
Mm.
really touched me in that way.
Mm.
And in fact, I'll say this about the album because I haven't heard this album in many years until Dan said it to me. I listened to it and I listened to it quite intently in a studio. And I thought, damn, we were good. We were really good.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that says a
Yeah.
lot. I'm just
Yeah.
being very frank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You're right.
this
Yeah.
album is frightfully good. It really is. I listened to it the other day. It's absolutely remarkable the way they've captured the atmosphere and the performance and the whole
Mm.
thing really. And they've messed about. They've changed, haven't they? Changed the order, the track listing order from the original release. Am I correct there? To make it as it was actually
Yeah.
on the night.
Yeah, yeah.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's not.
it's
It's
as a show actually started. You have the intro, and then you have the click, the snapping figures. Yeah, and it's the order. It's the order of the show.
Yeah.
As and if you hear it in 5.1 and Atmos, which is fantastic, you
mm,
can actually feel the atmosphere and the ambience of the orchestra of the band, the audience, and also you could hear the band talking
yeah.
amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
And
sounds.
be, yeah, heckling. Yeah,
John screaming, yeah, yeah, let's
yeah, yeah, I
go.
know. Yeah, mummy. Yeah,
Well,
no,
it is a. It is a stunning release. It's available on 2 CD. It's also available as a 2 CD and Blu-ray, and it's also available on vinyl as well. And there is a purchasing link just below this video. This is out on May the 2nd. Gentlemen, thank you so much for spending some time with me. And
thank you.
let's hope this. I think you'll probably sell loads of this. I think it's going to do really well.
Well,
Oh,
so,
thank you.
yeah,
I think I mean, I just think it's absolutely marvelous. Anyway, gentlemen,
thank
enjoy
you.
the rest of your evening. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's all right. Thanks,
Thanks, Barry.
Barry.
Thanks,
My
Barry.
pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.